Hello, everyone. This is AHA Radio, and you're listening to Coach Katerina from Crossover Coaching. It's Wednesday, the 30th of December, and I'm back just to do a little bit of closure of the year and review. I thought it might be interesting for you to know a little bit more about kind of my personal review for me. And then just summarize that and just talk about some thoughts about what I see coming forward, going forward into 2021. All right, so my year in review. Well, the one good thing that I had this year was I didn't move. I actually was in the same home for a year, which was pretty good for me. It's been one area of challenge for me is to find a good place to hang my hat, I guess one can say, for more than a year. And I've almost been in this one location for 2. So that's a really good thing. So next year will be about, in the spring will be 2 years. And that really helps. It really does help. It lessens the stress, and because moves can be very a bit of an upheaval for sure. So, okay, so that was a really positive thing that was great about last year for me. Kind of a funny thought, but there's a couple of interesting things that I just wanted to highlights, and good or bad, but they are kind of stood out for me. Definitely, the pandemic, of course, was a very stressful beginning. Dealing with all of that at the beginning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I go over the review. But I guess what I wanted to say, what stood out for me is, when I look back and reflected, was that before the pandemic, this was in mid-January of 2020, I was doing some business. Taking some opportunities, some business opportunities, and reaching out to the local economic development organization in my area, and just to check to see what projects they may have going and where I might be able to assist small business or entrepreneurs. And this was about mid-January, and I went in and arranged a meeting and did have a meeting a week or so later. And we talked about, what projects, they had going on. And, we kind of went over, he had this, this bulletin board thing with all these points of, several projects that were on the table. And, I'm looking at them, and I was a little bit like, where does this fit in? And I'm thinking to myself, how does this fit in with the times? And remember, this was mid to late January. By the time I got the meeting, it was, I think, the beginning of February. But I hadn't, the pandemic hadn't started, and there wasn't anything really much about it in the news yet. So, but I just was making my usual rounds of seeking new business and looking where I can support small business with my field. So anyway, we looked at all these projects they had, listed on the bulletin board, and I was trying to think of, how I could fit in there. And anyway, we got started talking about business startups and entrepreneurs, and and that conversation was kind of around that and around markets and farmers markets, which I really love, and I think are really important to communities. And that there's a lot of entrepreneurs or startups that begin at farmers markets, and I was talking about that. And somehow, just before the meeting ended and our conversation kind of dwindled down, I just looked at him and I thought to myself, I don't know how this came out, but I just had this really unusual sense, and I just looked at him and said, whatever you do, don't mess around with the entrepreneurial spirit. Don't hurt the entrepreneurial spirit. And I don't know at the moment why, like at that time, why that was so important to me to share. I mean, this is the Economic Development Association of the area where I live, and I guess I just didn't see the support in the bulletin points, and I didn't really hear it at the table, and somehow I just had a really strong sense that somewhere down the road, the entrepreneurial spirit was in jeopardy. I really did, and I said that right to his face, and right in our meeting. So anyway, left, and of course, not less than a month later, the pandemic hit. All the small businesses were closed. If you were an entrepreneur, you would have been really struggling. The farmers markets were closed at the beginning for a while, and so I just that was something that really stood out for me, and you have to remember these things that you point out to people. And you say them for a reason, or maybe you have, I felt that there was some sort of foresight in saying that. But of course, I had no idea that the pandemic was going to hit and how it was going to affect small business and the entrepreneurial spirit. But I just had a really strong sense. And it was almost as like a warning from me to tell him, don't you dare touch the entrepreneurial spirit. And it was like I was speaking to a bigger, a bigger picture, as opposed to just this one fellow in charge of the Economic Development Association in my area. So it just stood out as I reviewed my year. Then I think, as the year went on, of course, the pandemic was really, really stressful. And, for about 2 weeks, I guess I really felt quite a lot of stress from the situation, and just like, what the heck is going on? How do you try to understand how this could be so huge and it was affecting the whole world in such a huge way. So it was a bit of a struggle at the moment, at the time, in the first couple of weeks, to kind of figure it out. But I did follow the news from around the world, and in particularly in the U.S., because I felt that a lot of the things that are going on, we're all affected. But I do feel that there is a lot of information coming out from the U.S. So I really, as the year went on, really felt this because this pandemic didn't settle itself down, and I think we weren't really affected too badly here in the southwest of Canada, but of course all the businesses were closed down, and then they had these gradual openings and phase 1, phase 2, and so forth, which was really bizarre, because we really in the area that we live in, it's really rural, and there's not a lot of people, so we have a small population. So, but anyway, I guess because this never really has gone away, and here we are at the end of the year of 2020, and it's still in the news, and it's picked up again this fall, and it's become, I really began to feel that this isn't just about a virus. It's really felt like war. When you think about, although, haven't been personally in a war, there's been wars throughout my lifetime as a young child, I guess, different wars overseas and things like that. But but when you hear about a war starting, this is what it's like. It's like it starts, and you think that they're going to, solve something, or, come to some sort of solution, and it's not going to drag on. But that's what wars do. They drag on, and they just go on and on and on. And so you have to I felt that, in my opinion, this is a war. And it's just a different type. So, yeah, so I think that was a revelation of sorts, because at first you think, oh, it's just a health issue thing. And, we've had these health issues or warnings before, but not quite in the same way. But, it can happen. But really, as you can see, it's dragged on and on. And hopefully, I have great hope that it is going to be over sooner than later. Okay, very soon, I can hope. Okay, so I think, but in a great thing that has happened for many people, it definitely has happened for me. So when I look back at the year after, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I started, within that first 2 weeks, I started this little radio show, AHA Radio. And I started because I felt it was kind of like an aha moment. Oh, I could communicate with people through this sort of radio video format. But the aha moment really came from a moment I had years back, and I've mentioned this before in one of my other radio shows, where I was at a business event. And it was a women's only, and it was, just supposed to be an inspirational thing during Business Week. And it was several years back, almost 10 years back. And I was in this event and listening to another speaker, and I heard a thought came through like a little aha moment came to me, and it was like, at home action. What you can do. You can create something right from where you are with all that you have, right at home. So I thought this was a really great, combining the two together. And since we were all indoors and shut down and couldn't go anywhere for several weeks, I felt that this would be a really great way to inspire, to just motivate or encourage people to, there's lots we can do at home and lots that we can create, and ideas, and those aha sparks of inspiration can come to you even at home, and sometimes most often at home. So some of the other things that so the radio show started, and I've slowly done been doing these radio shows since March, and I do them every week, every couple weeks, when I feel that there's something that is really kind of niggling at me to share with you, and some aha moments that I think that in the now that can be really beneficial and potentially inspiring. Okay, so after my radio show, and it was March, so where I live in March, we have early spring, so it was definitely planting time, and I just got right into gear, and I got where I'm living at this moment. I have a little bit of more land, and shared a little bit of the ground and the soil with my neighbor, and grew a good garden. So I got into gardening, which I usually do, but I'm doing often in pots. But this year I actually had a little plot of land, so I grew a nice garden, which was great. And I had greens and veggies and all kinds of great things coming from the garden, herbs and things like that. And through the season last year, through the spring, through the summer, and also it inspired me to do a lot of preserves. And since I was wasn't traveling as much and that sort of thing, I had more time. And there's plenty of apple trees around that often people aren't using their apples. They just don't produce anything with them. So I got really into production mode, and I did applesauce from my neighbor's apples and from my landlord's apples. He's got a couple of apple trees, and I did lots of applesauce. I also grew lots of tomatoes and did tomato sauce and froze tomatoes. I even did different types of preserves with salt and vinegar and things like that. So, and just prepared. I became a lot more prepared. I got, I have obviously have a freezer on my fridge, but it's not as big. So I got myself a small freezer and filled it full with all the things I need. And then also I picked lots of berries. Blackberries were great this season, and raspberries and blueberries and things like that. So I am well stocked. So I did take advantage of that and took the opportunity to make sure I was well prepared for the fall and for this winter, and it's worked out really, really well. So that was these are the great things that came from it. And then my landlord actually, he did a lot of things as well, but he got a generator, which was great because in our area, we can have storms that take the power out quite easily. So anyway, so he got a generator, so we're set. Like if we've had power outage, but it wasn't for long. A few weeks back, I think it was out for maybe 5 hours or something like that. But all in all, we're set. So these were some of when I look back, there's some of the things that I thought about that stood out and were really, really productive and, this at-home action I actually, before the pandemic, this is one other thing that stood out for me, is before the pandemic, in early January, at the new year of 2020, I love to make bread and I like to bake, but I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to have my own sourdough starter? And so and it takes a couple of weeks to get the starter active enough so that you can bake bread. So beginning of January, I created this starter, and it took a few weeks, and by the third week of January, I was making my own sourdough bread. And so I was, becoming quite self-sustaining. As long as I had a good bag of flour, and which you don't need much when you're making bread, just need flour, water, salt, and your starter, your yeast. So I was making sourdough French loaves and buns, and I still have that same sourdough, so it's almost a year old, and you just keep feeding it, and then you can refrigerate it in the times where you've got lots of bread and you're not baking. You can refrigerate it and store it. So I did that, and that was really great. And it was interesting because I had done it prior to the pandemic, so I was it's an interesting thing how you naturally will begin to prepare some things, even though you may not know as of things, pending things, but you have a sense. So it's like I store water as well, so I always have quite a few gallons of water, at least almost 10 gallons of water in containers that are handy, like in about 3-gallon containers that I can move around and clean out and add the fresh water. I just do it water from the tap, but I have good water because we have great water in BC. But so you just get that sense, and so you have to listen to that intuition, listen to it. So I had made this sourdough yeast starter early January, and so I was very lucky. I didn't have to go out and buy bread, and I could make my own bread. So I had some things that I could do myself, which was really great. But anyway, that's just some of the key things. The other thing early on is that I did was I reached out to friends and family with cards. I just started doing that right away. Like, made sure I had people's addresses, mailing addresses, and I always collect cards. I love fun and unique cards, so I do send cards on occasion, but I just took the opportunity to do it more often and reached out in a personal way, which is kind of nice for people that are home alone. They can go to the mail and find a cute little card or a really sweet card. So I did do those things, and and sometimes I would tuck in little things in the cards, like a flower from my garden, or some rosemary, or something unique or something that I'd made, and because I make my own scented oils and things like that from using my garden flowers, and I make tinctures and things like that. So I was, trying to keep my family and friends, feeling that they're in my thoughts. So, okay, so this is going to be a little longer. Obviously, we're already into the 20 minutes, I guess. So a little bit longer today, but I really wanted to do this wrap up of 2020. Now, remember at the beginning there, I told you that I went and saw the Economic Development Association and talked to the fellow there. Well, nothing came out of all the projects we looked at. Somehow they just didn't really connect me to those. But then the pandemic happened, and then I reached out again in August, or I think it was early August, when things were kind of opening up again here, into the, I think the third or fourth, maybe the fourth stage of opening. We were kind of delayed here. I don't know why, but anyway, small businesses were opening. So I went back and had another meeting, and they thought, maybe I could do a little PR for a certain project that they're doing, because I have a small business background and a sales background. So I said, sure, I'd love to do this little PR project and reach out to businesses, because now you could really, businesses were open and could go and share some information with them. So but then after a month of prepping for this project, and it's still a mystery to me why, but they just decided that I'm not the right person to do it. So now I could go into all that details, but I didn't end up getting the final project. And that was another interesting thing. And I actually feel like, there could be a couple of reasons, but what stood out for me, after doing a month of preparation and learning about the project that they wanted me to take on, suddenly they decided that I wasn't, the right fit again. So, and I think that it may have been something to do with my social media. Not that I share a lot of things on my social media that are, that one could, not want to use me for business. I'm very careful there, but I do have common sense, and so on occasion I'll share my opinion to what I think is logical and makes sense to me, and I'll agree with certain things. And if you're agreeing with something that they don't agree with, then I think that could have been it, because that's what they do nowadays. They really look at those things, so where you stand. And or I also think that the other thing is that they could have just decided to hire someone within, because it is a government organization. They are paid by the federal government to do the economic development for the communities, and so they may have just decided to hire somebody inside. But after a month of preparation and a signed contract, they decided that I wasn't the one they'd wanted. But anyway, so some really interesting points that stood out for me. Some really good things. That wasn't such a bad thing, although it took a month of my time away from things I would normally do, that I might do in other areas of my business. So that was a little bit of a discouraging. But I just got back at it and did some creative projects after that. And I did some great t-shirts and some beautiful note cards, because I do photography and art, and worked a little bit of some great little projects there. And so, so that's sort of how and then Christmas was awesome. Christmas was quieter than normal, but it was great. And I hope you guys have all had a really great Christmas, and I hope that you can look back too and pick up the things that stand out. I mean, that really help you to, strengthen your resolve for the year, right? yeah, so I know you all, will be thinking about all the great things that came out of the, of the shutdowns and everything, because we have to look at things positively. We have to take the best routes and the best path, and keep moving. So I guess that leads me to kind of giving you a few thoughts about I don't know if they're predictions, but maybe they're predictions, but a few thoughts about 2021. And I guess there are three things that really stood out from 2020 that I think are important for me and hopefully for you as well to bring into 2021. Anyway, some food for thought. So the three areas were, like to be at peace. That's number one, to be at peace. Now, and I'll tell you, through 2020, I have a few friends that are and my mom, who's still alive, she's in her 90s. But I see those elders when I feel I have to think about the when you see the chaos around you. Some elders are so wonderful in helping you to just to be at peace. And, a couple of things that stood out for me listening to my elders in 2020 and to bring into 2021 was, just one step at a time and one day at a time, and that, things cycle. And, so, striving to understand and, with an open heart to build your strength. And I think, you build your strength with your integrity to do what's best and to do what's right for yourself and for others and family and friends and for others. So if you can keep moving along on that path, you can be at peace with yourself. The other thing that stood out, in which I think, again, I think it's good to bring into the 2021, and that's this whole point of the entrepreneurial spirit. The entrepreneurial spirit in others. Don't to really keep that spirit alive is to to keep reaching out and to not to worry about the things around you. Focus on your goals and to initiate those ideas and find the support and the coaching to assist you to initiate those ideas. And the other thing that came out of 2020 and is important to take with you is trust. I think this is a year our trust was really tested. Like, who do you trust? And first and foremost, and I think this goes with each of these things, be at peace, your entrepreneurial spirit, and trust. And it's to have those within yourself first, right? To trust your own senses, trust your judgment, trust your abilities, and therefore that leads into trusting others and being able to be at peace. When you're at peace, you have this strength of integrity to know what's best for yourself. And then you seek that in others, right? You seek that they're doing the best that they can as well. And it helps to bring you into that, compassion, but also standing up for yourself and, and also preparing and make sure you protect yourself, trust your senses, trust your judgment, trust your abilities. Okay, so we're coming to a close. It's almost 30 minutes, and I'd like to close off and wish you all an amazing, joyful, special, just wonderful 2021. Happy New Year, everyone. Lots of love to you. Take care, big hugs, and have fun. Oh, one other thing, my little predictions for 2021 were, let me see, I've written them down somewhere here. quickly before I finish off. Okay, I think they were. Oh yeah. Okay, I think we're gonna have. I think it's going to be a year where we're going to really make others in leadership. Those in leadership be accountable. So they're going to have the biggest challenges of their lives, and that one of them is accountability, and then and responsibility for what they're doing. And we are going to have to be responsible, and we have to make others accountable. The other thing that I really felt for 2021 is non-compliance, meaning that we have to use common sense. And I think we really need to get to this common sense, and really strengthen our core. And we are just not going to be compliant with these nonsensical, ridiculous, obedient. We have to be obedient to these ridiculous, closures and face covers and so forth and so on. When the leaders themselves that are giving us these restrictions are not complying to those restrictions themselves, and they're not accountable for them. So I think that we're going to have to really stand up. I think we will. I think in 2021 we are going to stand up. We're not going to take that, and we're going to make them accountable. And we're going to get closer and closer. We're going to get to the truth. Truth 2021 is about truth, and I really feel that it's about grace. So I just wanted to share 2021, my thoughts about that. All right, that's it. Happy New Year, everyone. Have a great New Year's Eve, and lots of love to you. Bye for now.